Virgin Galactic stock, ticker symbol SPSE, has gone through a crazy roller coaster ride lately, to say the least. And this is a company that really has ambitions of taking people to space and charging them a lot of money for that. And it's really believed that the space tourism market, especially, is going to be worth a ton of money in the future, especially over the very long term. So if you're a young investor in this company, then maybe this is something that ends up making you a ton of money, say 10 to 20 years out from now, or maybe even longer. Or maybe this is a really overhyped, kind of trendy, speculative stock that ends up crashing and burning and losing you a lot of money. Either way, the stock did skyrocket by over 400% from their IPO at one point, only to later crash by about 70% recently, which is where we sit today. So considering that the stock has crashed recently, is now the perfect time to pick up this stock and hold it long term for all of that future potential? Or is it still too risky to gamble on? And is it maybe a little bit of a better idea to kind of wait and see how consistent their business will be and wait for them to actually start generating some meaningful sales? Well, it's not an easy question to answer. I'm going to give my perspective and my opinion on all of that. We're going to cover the business. We're going to talk about their future potential. We're going to talk about what the competition looks like. And of course, I'm going to talk about the stock and let you know if I plan to buy this stock myself anytime soon. So I hope you guys enjoy it. It's going to be a fun one. Hit the like button if you do, but let's go ahead and jump straight into this. Okay, now before we start analyzing the stock, let's just get a quick idea of what this company is and what they plan to do. So you probably already know Virgin Galactic was founded by the famous entrepreneur Sir Richard Branson, and that was back in 2004. Of course, Branson is probably most famous for previously founding the Virgin Group, which is a giant conglomerate that owns many different types of businesses around the world, especially famous ones in the tourism, travel, and leisure markets. And I believe as of right now, the Virgin Group is the largest shareholder of Virgin Galactic at around a quarter of the company. Anyway, the mission of Galactic is to offer space tourism in that it will allow customers to pay $250,000 to be able to ride their suborbital space plane that is essentially launched by another carrier plane, at which point the space plane proceeds to travel into the edge of space where passengers are given a few minutes to enjoy zero gravity. I think it's like 6 minutes or so. Not very long, by the way, especially for that price tag. But anyway, the entire trip should last several hours, I believe. So really, it's all kind of, you're paying for like the entire experience and just kind of being able to see some really nice views of obviously both Earth and space. But the ultimate or kind of long-term goal of all of that is to have hundreds of flights running every single year and be able to generate billions of dollars in revenue from it. On top of that, though, they're also working on various other ways to generate sales, like, for example, carrying payloads up into space for various different purposes, including things like scientific research, which, by the way, they've already been hired by NASA for, and they plan to also go into astronaut training services, which they also partnered with NASA on to help them train private astronauts to be able to travel to the International Space Station. And perhaps most exciting of all of these, they continue to invest in supersonic travel that will basically make long flights that are transcontinental or fly over oceans take dramatically less time. For example, their new business jet is aiming to reach Mach 3 speed and go from New York to London in just 1.5 hours. Normally, that would take around 5 times longer. So that's a pretty big deal if you can attract a lot of those wealthy people that travel a lot for business or maybe other purposes, and they're trying to save time, and therefore they're willing to pay a premium price for the luxury of those shorter flights. Despite all of these ambitions, though, Virgin Galactic has practically no sales to show for it. This is a chart from Yahoo Finance. Sales are in the green and profits are in the blue. And yeah, you're talking basically no sales and hundreds of millions of dollars in losses per year. So not very good performance. And obviously there's a reason for this, right? Virgin Galactic is still trying to get their business up off the ground. In fact, they've been delaying space flights for years, with their next test flight that was supposed to happen in February. That got delayed by an entire quarter again without really much explanation for it. And then their actual customer flights, those were supposed to start bringing in revenue this year. Well, those two got delayed, and that happened all the way to at least next year. So customer flights generating revenue, probably not happening until sometime next year. And as if all of this wasn't bad enough, we even started to see some of Galactic's biggest investors selling the stock, which doesn't really bode well for confidence in the company. Chairman Chamath sold all of his personal shares, although I think he still owns a lot through his investment company, but he sold like his personal shares, and I think he gave an excuse that he's trying to invest in climate change or something, which is fine. I'm not going to criticize, people have their own reasons, but I just question whether that's true or whether he's using climate change as an excuse. I don't know. But anyway, that happened. I'm not criticizing that, by the way. I believe him. But then founder Richard Branson, he also sold another $150 million worth of stock recently too, although I believe he still owns about a quarter of the company. And I guess to be fair to Branson, he does own, you got to think about this, he does own a lot of companies in the leisure markets that are getting absolutely destroyed right now by the pepperoni lockdowns. So yeah, he probably needed to liquidate some of his assets to help support his other struggling businesses. But still, none of this bodes well for investor confidence. You can't really sugarcoat that. And of course, you can see how all of these different things added up would upset investors, and it would make for a super volatile stock. After IPOing for around $12 a share, the stock shot up to the 30s, then crashed back down to around 10 before skyrocketing once again to over $60 a share this year, which is like more than a 400% increase from their IPOs. That's a huge climb. But then I'm going to zoom in here for this year, and you can see that now they have crashed yet again, this time dropping from over $60. They crashed by almost 70% to just $19 a share. And this happened in just the past couple of months. So clearly all of the delays, the lack of sales, and the lack of profits are starting to take a major toll on the stock, and investors seem to no longer be patient. Now, having said that, this is one of those very speculative, trendy kind of hype stocks that can make huge swings to not just the downside, but also the upside. So having said that, if we start to see a lot of positive news start to roll out and they start hitting their targets and they start to generate some actual meaningful revenue, then is this a stock that will start to take off once again? Well, to answer that, we're gonna have to know a couple different things. So we'll wanna know what is the market potential here for their business and how many competitive threats are there for them? How much demand is there for their commercial flights, and do they have enough cash on hand to last them at least a few years until things really start rolling and kind of ramping up for their business and they start generating that revenue? Let's take a quick look at a few of those different things, and then I'll finish up the video with my overall conclusion. Okay, well, starting with the market opportunities, we know that the space industry as a whole will probably be worth over $1 trillion soon. According to Bank of America, they estimate it'll triple to $1.4 trillion over the next 10 years, which would put it right around the same size as the global tourism economy. That's huge. Now, of course, Virgin Galactic is only going to play a very small role in all of that. In fact, Cohen estimates that within the space tourism part of that market, Virgin Galactic could bring in about $1 billion in revenue by 2030. Obviously, that's a lot less than the 1 trillion larger market as a whole, but $1 billion per year for Galactic would actually still be very good. Right now, they generate practically zero revenue, and they lost over $60 million of free cash flow last quarter. So if we multiply that by 4, we'd get around $240 million of negative free cash flow per year. But when you add that $1 billion in revenue, well, that definitely would ease a lot of that pain and most likely make them even profitable. On top of that, thanks to a lot of investment and selling shares to raise funds, their balance sheet could actually sustain them for at least a couple more years until they can start generating sales. As of the last quarter, they had over $660 million in cash, so more than 2.5 times what they would require per year. Plus, all of these estimates are being pretty conservative. It's assuming that Galactic can only fly around 3,400 passengers a year. But in terms of the actual potential, well, if you look at people that are worth over $5 million, meaning that they will likely have enough money to pay for one of those Galactic tickets, well, there's around 2.4 million of those people around the world, of which a Cohen survey found that over 1/3 of them would be willing to pay the $250,000 price tag of a Galactic ticket. So let's do the math here. On the 2.4 million people, that would give Galactic a total addressable market of around $600 billion. That's like 600 times the projected revenue that they have for 2030. And that's not even considering their other potential markets of supersonic travel and payload carry into space. So in reality, there's actually a huge amount of room for upside. However, we should be careful not to get carried away here. This is all still just market potential, and it doesn't take competition into account, which we'll talk more about in just a second. Still, if we take that survey into account that said around 40% of those people would pay for that ticket, then we're still talking about close to 1 million customers that have already stated that they'd be willing to pay for it. And that would still equate to a market of around $250 billion just for the space tourism part of their business. That's really big. So really, I think the question isn't so much about the potential that's out there, because we know that there's tons of potential out there, but rather the question is, how quickly can Galactic ramp up their business to actually target all of those customers? And one issue that I have with that is that there's already a lot of competition that is ramping up right alongside them, and they're funded and led by some of the richest people in the world, like, for example, Blue Origin, which is founded by Jeff Bezos, and SpaceX, which is founded by Elon Musk. When looking at Blue Origin, they're already planning to launch paid flights to space by July. Now, granted, that's only one commercial passenger on that day, but they're also planning to fly at least a couple more times later this year, which is much faster than Virgin Galactic, who, by the way, delayed their commercial flights until next year. On top of that, Blue Origin only charges $200,000 versus Galactic at $250,000. So at about $50,000 cheaper, Blue Origin's addressable market might also be larger than Galactic. Plus, you still have SpaceX to worry about, which in my opinion is going to be the hottest and most talked about of the three. And it's also my personal pick to win most of these different like space related markets. And in large part, but I would say due to the fact that they're led by Elon Musk, who I think is arguably might be the best CEO in the world right now. I mean, he's definitely up there. And they're already launching in the fall an all-civilian vessel into space that will go even higher than the International Space Station and be up there for not just minutes, but it's literally going to be in orbit for days. I think it's like 3 days in orbit. I mean, Musk is even trying to use his spaceship and rocket system to travel between continents, then to the moon, and then to even Mars. And if there's one thing that we know about Musk, it's how ambitious he is and how he pushes the boundaries and his desperate attempts to be number one and lead the market. So when you look at it, Virgin Galactic as a stock has cratered. We know that the market is going to be very large. They have plenty of cash on hand, and they're trying their very hardest to be the first to market, as is evidenced by all of those things being helped out by the fact that they were the first kind of pure play to go IPO and open up to public investment like you and me. So that really helped them out a lot. And from that standpoint, when you look at this is a stock that we know has climbed very high in the past, and right now it is very low. So it does have potential. Then yeah, it does start to look super attractive, either as like a long-term speculative play, or maybe even as like a swing trade to kind of play off of all of the hype and trendiness that causes it to be a volatile stock. On the other hand, you start to take a closer look at Virgin Galactic and maybe you start to scrutinize it a bit and you realize, okay, they're charging $250,000 just to spend a few minutes up in space. In my opinion, huge waste of money, but I mean, I understand other people would enjoy it, so that's fine. We'll kind of leave that point out. But then you still have huge competition from very well-funded companies. You've got Blue Origin charging even less money and possibly maybe even being first to market, being faster to market than Galactic. And then you still have SpaceX, which is my personal favorite, and they have huge ambitions and they're trying to go to orbit. They're going to the International Space Station. They're going to the moon. They're trying to go to Mars. All of a sudden, the shine and excitement of Virgin Galactic as the first kind of pure play that went public at IPO, you know, a lot of that shine starts to fade away when you start to consider some of these other things. So we shouldn't sugarcoat this. This is still a very speculative stock company that does not really generate any meaningful sales. It's losing a lot of money every single year. It's burning through cash. Even when they do start to generate sales, there's going to be a lot of competition in that market fighting them for those customers. Granted, that market may very well be large enough to support multiple companies here, and that's a fair argument, I think. But it's still highly speculative at this point. And I think it's the type of company that is driven heavily by hype and news and hitting targets and missing targets and things like that. So if that's something that you can stomach, well, then maybe you want to consider it as a spec play, maybe as a swing trade, something like that. I definitely wouldn't make it more than like 1% of my portfolio just because it's too risky right now. For me personally, I'd rather wait a little bit to see if the business does kind of take off for them, because if it does, then maybe I'll be willing to pay a little bit of a higher price tag for that stock, get and have the trade-off of having a little bit more comfort. By the way, I'm sorry if there's a lot of noise in the background. Neighbors are playing music. But anyway, I might be willing to pay a little bit higher stock price if I get the trade-off of having a little more comfort knowing that the business is actually performing well and they're hitting targets. Right now, it's still very, very early. Again, this is the type of stock you kind of have to go with your gut a little bit on. My gut tells me that this stock can go back to some of the levels that they reached before, which does make it super attractive, again, as like a swing trade. Because if they start hitting targets, a lot of momentum builds up, a lot of positive news comes out. We already know that this is a stock that can take off just purely based on that, because they've never really been generating any kind of meaningful sales. But over the longer term, other companies are the ones that I would rather invest in, like Blue Origin or SpaceX. Granted, I know they're not public, but maybe one day they are. And definitely SpaceX, if that one ever goes public, I can tell you right now, I almost certainly will be buying SpaceX stock if they do ever go public. So for me personally, I think I'm staying out of this one for now. But if it keeps dropping, gets down to like $15, maybe even down to that IPO price, man, it is so hard to resist it. I would be very tempted, but again, I would go very, very, very small, less than 1% of my portfolio for sure, and then kind of reevaluate as I see the business grow, and then I can think about making it an actual investment rather than just kind of a spec or a short-term swing trade or anything else. So for now, I think I'm staying on the sidelines. It's very tempting. Maybe I'll end up buying it. If I do, I will make an update video, so make sure that you're subscribed for that. But as of right now, at least as of today, I'm not planning to buy this stock right now. We'll see if it keeps falling. I might have to reevaluate that. But let me know what you guys think. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. I've got a lot of really smart viewers. Sometimes you guys leave the best comments out there and you catch things that I miss or you add more to it. I'd love to read those comments. I'll try to respond to as many as I can. Let me know what other stocks you want me to review and analyze next. Thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed the video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.